Have you ever been thrown a curveball so big it completely reshapes your life? That is exactly what happened to a dear friend of mine, Geoff Rupp, who is joining us on today's episode. Geoff and I have known each other for nearly 20 years, and about a decade ago, Geoff was diagnosed with cancer and also made redundant from his 20-plus-year career in television. And this was a huge turning point in his life, not only in his health, but also how he was living, led him down a path to go and study in India. And he now teaches other people how to heal themselves, how to come into alignment with their bodies using Vedic meditation, Himalayan breathwork, and Vedic astrology. This is a two-parter. There is so much gold in here, and I know you are just going to love Geoff's wisdom. Geoff, welcome to the Becoming Your Warrior podcast.
Thanks, Emma. Thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
It's good to have you here. Like, we have known each other a really long time. Like, I think it's now, was 2007 we met when we were working at Network 10. Yeah. So a long, long time ago. So
I
today,
always remember you coming in when you first came in.
Oh, really?
Probably a little person. Yeah, you were in the newsroom, right? You were in the news?
I was in the newsroom for a couple of years. Yeah. So long ago now. So long ago.
Yeah.
But I guess I want to start off with a big question, which is, what has been the biggest obstacle or challenge that you have faced in your life, and how did you get through it?
Well, I would say it was probably when I had a cancer diagnosis when I was 39. And also at that time, like being made redundant. And then, 6 months later, so basically like in February, I found out I had cancer. 6 months later, I was made redundant. And then, at that particular time in my life, I really felt that the sky was falling. I didn't really know what was going to happen. And I think that my meditation practice and, those that I had at that particular time was really what led me to where I was going, because I ended up doing Ayurvedic medicine and all that kind of stuff as well, which was really all part of Vedic meditation, or the Vedas, with the Vedic knowledge that's all around. And it's really changed the course of my whole life.
Yeah, it's incredible. I mean, that is, for most people, I think just getting a cancer diagnosis is well and truly enough. But, I remember, obviously, that was when all the redundancies were happening as well. So, I mean, how you kind of said like you felt like the sky was falling. What was that like for you at that time in your life when this double whammy got,
I think it
sent to you?
was hard. It was hard in the way that obviously I had, my health that I had to look after, because up until that point I probably hadn't been that healthy. I was managing a sports channel then, I was head of sport for Channel 10. And then I was also, my dinners were canapes and beer most nights, and going to events most weekends and sitting in a box seat, and also, alcohol and, just not eating properly, really. I think that it was actually more when I lost my job and my phone stopped ringing and no one cared who I was anymore, because I couldn't get their sport on TV, or, even their program when I was in programming at Channel 10 and that stuff as well. I think that I didn't quite realize that people only liked me for what I could do for them. And so, when the email stopped and the phone stopped ringing and that kind of stuff, I started to wonder, like, who am I? I didn't actually know who I was, because up until that point in my life, I'd had a television career since I left school. So, when you worked in TV, it was always considered to be, glamorous, even though we know from working behind the scenes, it's just like a normal job, like any job. It has glamour moments. But I think that was probably the biggest crux. It was like I realized at that particular point in time that I did not know who I was when I wasn't Geoff Rupp, TV guy.
Mm-hmm.
And so, and that was like a thing. I also was very, very mindful of the fact that I thought, I do want to be Geoff Rupp, cancer guy.
Mm-hmm.
Right? That was the reason why, I think you might remember around that time, I didn't really tell very many people that I had cancer. Like I literally told a small group of people, and my parents, obviously, my family. They knew, but I didn't really tell anyone else, because I didn't really want empathy, and I also didn't really want for it to be something that was going to start defining like who I was. And that was something I just did naturally. I did do it consciously, but it was also something that I just felt that I needed to do because I didn't want to make it into like a thing. It was like all of those things like combined together where it was like, but the first big part was really discovering who I was. And that was probably the hardest part because I really almost had to start again and go, okay, well, if I'm not that person. And it was interesting listening to my language actually, because when people, you meet people all the time and then you forget that people go like, oh, what do you do? And we're all kind of defined by our job. And I remember hearing myself say, oh, I used to work at Channel 10 and I did this and I used to do this, and that's when it's very interesting to see, because that's when I was like, I remember consciously thinking as well, I need to change my story. Like, I need to work out who am I and what do I do? Because it doesn't really matter what the job is that I do. But it was very interesting that was the thing that defined me. And actually, I suppose having a very prominent role, it made that egoic part of my life stronger, until it was taken away. And then I thought, yeah, I need to do something about that.
Yeah, I really get that because it's like even now, even though I'm, really as far away from TV, I still do a little bit of wellness role, but it's really interesting, that story, because I think when you say that you work in TV, people are automatically very fascinated in you, aren't they? It's kind of,
Yes.
you kind of go, oh, like I produce TV shows, and everyone's like, oh, which one, and it's like, and it's an easy conversation starter. So when you meet people, people are very interested in you. So I really understand that, like, separation from that. But so for you, it's kind of like, that egoic thing. And I understand this as well, of even saying, oh, well, I used to, run sports channels. I mean, I guess going through what we would now call, that's a bit of an ego. Well, it's an ego death, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. 100%. Yeah.
And so what was your process of going through that ego death, and what kind of tools or resources did you use to move forward from that, or be in
I
the now, I
was
should say?
Yeah. I think that it was definitely meditation. I was lucky that I was already had Vedic meditation, which was like my meditation technique. I tried lots of other different techniques, but that was something that when I was even head of sport, then I used to actually use it as my stress management technique. Like I had gone and learnt it, and it was something that I just did religiously every day. And because I used to meditate on planes because I flew a lot and all that stuff, it just became this beautiful tool that I had in my life that I really felt helped me a lot. And so when the job part of it got taken away, I almost like doubled down on the meditation part of it as well, because I realized, like, with all the knowledge that I had, about Vedic meditation and Vedic knowledge about, happiness is within you, and even the shirt I'm wearing today, access the greatness within you. The irony, because it is that you get told all those things, but it was also about how do I tap into that bliss state? How do I do that stuff? And I really understood as well that I think from doing a few courses and like all that stuff as well, was understanding like, okay, I need to work out who I am at my core when I'm not anything else, or what just makes me happy. And I think that was like definitely part of it. Meditation was definitely a massive part for me of like my life. I definitely doubled down on meditation during that particular period of my life. Like I made sure I did my 20 minutes twice a day, but a lot of times I did, there are other practices you can add on. Like I definitely doubled down because I found that started to tune me into myself. And then because I had the cancer as well, I also did this whole protocol where I did like no alcohol, no dairy, no sugar, no meat. I was doing Bikram yoga every day when Bikram yoga was like a thing. But Bikram yoga was great because it was like you sweat. I love sweating when I was like working out, but it was also a sweat thing where I could taste my sweat every day, and I knew like, oh, every morning I used to go at 6 o'clock and do a Bikram yoga class, and I would always taste my sweat during the class. So I knew like, oh, is it sweet, which means I'm alkaline, or is it salty, which means I'm acidic? So if it was like salty, I'd go like, oh, I need to put more greens in me today, or I need to be really mindful about what I'm putting into my body, because I wanted to try to keep my body in a really alkaline state. And so if it was sweet, I thought like, oh, okay, like I'm good today. So stuff like that, and then I think that because I did no alcohol, no dairy, no sugar, no meat, all that stuff during that particular time, I was very clean. Like, I think the cancer, having lost my job, doing all this, like, was almost like the perfect storm in a way of like something that was pushing me somewhere else that I needed to go. and it tuned me into myself. I think when you're like eating really clean and you're doing things like that as well, like my vibration, obviously, that I understand now, my energy levels were different. I was able to almost like intuitively start to understand, like, oh, this is the direction that I need to move in. So I think that it was more like, we call it charm and aversion when I'm teaching meditation now. Like, do you follow charm, what feels good? Or if you're moving in a direction that feels not that good, then stop. And, you know, my teacher Anand always says, like, if you just change your course like 1 degree, you get a whole new destination. If you're heading in a certain direction, like, change course, whole new destination. That's why we all have opportunities every day to make different choices in our life with what we're doing as well. We can choose to be a victim, or choose to do certain things and see things in certain ways, or we can choose to take a different approach and see what happens,
Yeah.
and I think that's the beautiful part of life.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think there's a really beautiful quote by a teacher that I've studied under, which is his name's Peter Crone. And it's, life will present you with the people and circumstances to show you where you're not free. And so it's just that, life is going to happen, and it's just about your evolvement through it, like how you evolve through it. And whether, yeah, just like you said, whether you're in that victim mindset, or whether you can actually see that this is a mirror, and what are you going to do with this, what are you going to do with this lesson? Um so tell me a little bit about, I mean, first of all, I just because I know people will be interested. Obviously you're cancer free now, which is incredible. And your approach was, I know you used Ayurveda, but you also used Western medicine as well.
Yeah, I used a
And
combination. Yeah.
what was the next stage of your journey from there, from the operation, from healing yourself? Where did that take you next?
Well, it took me, because I ended up going back into television. Like, I took some time off. I was lucky that I'd been at Channel 10 for 10 years by that stage. So I got a redundancy package and stuff like that as well, which worked out in my favor, which was great. So it gave me time to be able to take a bit of time off. Like I said, I felt that sky was falling, but actually in hindsight, when you look back on it, you can go like, oh, that was a godsend that I actually was able to leave during that time and then concentrate just on my health. And I ended up going to Foxtel 6 months later, like when I went back, and I was like head of the entertainment channels there. I was looking after on demand as well. But I remember, like, when I first went back in there, I definitely had a different approach. It was very interesting. Like, I wasn't looking at as something that was going to define me as well. I was definitely much more conscious of going like, oh, this is just what I'm doing as a funding mechanism to, like, do my job. And I still enjoyed it. I still enjoyed working in television. I still enjoyed that stuff, but I didn't have the same. I realized there was the passion that was like inside of me. So I thought my only way out is out. And I had also, because of my cancer journey with Ayurveda and meditation, and I'd seen how to really change my life, and I'd met so many other people whose lives it had changed. It was something that I thought I really wanted to move into the wellness space, but I definitely had a fear inside of me of going, well, how do I leave 300 grand a year and go to like zero? Because that's literally what I had to do. So it was like, but eventually the drive was like a little bit stronger, I suppose, where I decided one day that, like, a few things were happening at work as well, where it was very interesting, where, I had some problems with some staff, and then I was having like problems with other managers, and like, but it was almost like a way where I was awake enough to understand that, like, nature's trying to like push me out. This is happening because it hasn't happened before, and now all of a sudden it's happening, but in a way it was like the shaking of the apple cart of like someone going like, oh, you need to like do something. Like, I was hanging on because I was like almost more afraid of like what happens after. Didn't want to take a leap of faith and go like, well, this is what happens. But then one day I'd had enough, actually, where I'm feeling like this is not serving me, and I feel stressed in my body because I was starting not to sleep properly at night. And I was thinking like, actually, I just need to get out, because this is showing me that, like, I promised myself I wasn't going to do this again. So I left. I literally went in and I quit, and they said, if you do this, you'll burn every bridge. Like, I'll make sure you never work in television ever again. It was like a very heated thing. And and I actually said to them, you know what? I've decided I don't want to do this anymore. So like, burn up every bridge, blow it up. I don't care. Like, I said, you all should be doing me a favor because, like, I don't actually want to do this anymore. So it doesn't matter. Like, I've done everything I've wanted to do in television, plus like 100 other things that I didn't even know I wanted to do. So I
Yeah.
said, like, it's okay. I feel like it was over. And I literally, like, left that job. And a few months later, I was in India for 5 months, like studying to become a Vedic meditation teacher, because I knew that, when you do the Vedic meditation teacher training, it's like, you do these things called rounds and you do like 14 hours of meditation a day over 3 months. And, it's a really intensive program. But I remember at that time feeling like I didn't want to be anywhere else. But that was also, me moving into a new space. And I had to put a string in my bow. I thought if I'm going to actually like start moving into that area, which is what I wanted to be in, that wellness, spiritual kind of like, area, then I had to create a modality that I could teach or do something that was going to start opening the door or start pushing me in that direction so that I could start doing that. So I went and did that. And then, it's very interesting, like even just taking a leap of faith as well, because, in the Vedic worldview of how we look at life, it's about, nature likes it when you actually take a leap of faith and you do something that's just trusting that everything's going to be fine. And we actually get support from nature that we don't realize happens. And we always overthink things, go, well, how am I going to get the money to be able to do whatever I need to do? And when I get back, and and at that particular point of my life as well, I had other debts and I had other things, and I literally used the money that I had left over to like make myself debt free, but it didn't leave like a lot of money left in the bank. So the first test that I had to give myself was going like, okay, I'm just going to go to India, do this thing, even though my parents and everyone's telling me like, what are you doing? You're crazy. Like, you should be trying to get another job. And I was getting offered things as well. Like, but I was like, no, I'm going to go and do this. And, I went to India. I did it not knowing what was coming at the other side. And I think that, we don't know where it's coming, but I feel like that's what we need to do in terms of like taking leaps and
Yeah.
understanding
Deep
that nature
trust,
is always
right?
going to support us. And that's what meditation gives you as well. It gives you that deep trust of going like, okay, I just need to trust that it's going to be fine. Because you know what? If we really zoom out and look at the big timeline of our lives, when we go through all the ups and downs that we've been through, it's always worked out. We might have
Mm-hmm.
had tough times, but we've learned about ourselves. Or, we're only here for one purpose anyway,
Yeah.
evolution. There's no other purpose.
Evolution,
So yeah,
expansion. Yeah.
yeah.
Can we go back? Because that
Hmm.
was, I mean, so much. And it's so funny as you're telling that story, like I'm reliving it, but from my perspective, like I remember you being like, you're not going to hear from me for 5 months. I remember you driving your car up to your mum's. I remember you coming back and us all being like, Jeff's back. And you were like, I'm up in, the far north of Queensland driving down. So it's actually really sweet. It's like a little bit of a visit down memory lane. But can we just go back to, I guess, that decision to go to India and really just explaining like what Vedic, we've talked about certain words that are obviously very specific to Indian culture, like Ayurveda, Vedic meditation. And also, I know obviously you do Vedic astrology as well. So, can you talk to me? I guess about what is Vedic meditation, and why did you want to go and study that for 5 months? What's the difference between that and say traditional or TM meditation?
Well, with Vedic meditation, like there's like if we drum it all the way down just to one to three things, like you can normally put meditation into three buckets. There's like concentration techniques where you might concentrate on your breath or a candle or something, and then there's contemplation techniques, which are guided meditations or thinking about things, and then there's transcending techniques, which is using a mantra. So Vedic meditation falls into the mantra side. It's a 5,000-year-old technique. We use a mantra which is like a bija mantra. So bija means seed in Sanskrit. So you use a seed mantra. You don't say them out loud. They're not things like I am love or that stuff. They're actually sounds which are vibrational matches to your physiology and to nature kind of, that exists in dimensions of nature. And so it causes your egoic mind can't actually latch onto any meaning for that thing. So it causes it to go from active thinking mind down to this beautiful place of transcendence or that inner bliss state that resides in all of us. And, the other two techniques, they've been lobbed in as meditation, but really they're mindfulness techniques. They're not really meditation. Like, people say that like, oh, I meditate every day, but they listen to guided meditation on an app. And there's nothing wrong with that as well. It's very good for rewiring your brain, and it's very good for putting you into a relaxed state and giving you, but they're mindfulness practices. Like meditation, like transcendental meditation, Vedic meditation, they all come from the same body of knowledge. The are transcending techniques. They use mantras, and the there's other different types of techniques as well, which also use like different mantras and things like that as well. Like there's sattva meditation, which is also what Anand does, but actually the mantras are the same. The mantras that we use are, because all knowledge exists in consciousness. So the different rishis or the different teachers that came through, like Maharishi Mahesh Yogi was the TM guy, and that he was the one that died, and then like pretty much Vedic meditation came from the TM side, when my teacher Tom at the time broke away and created Vedic meditation when TM became a trademarked name. Now we have Vedic meditation, we have transcendental meditation, and all that stuff as well. So, but it all comes from Maharishi Mahesh Yogi, so it all stems from the same body of knowledge, going from Guru Dev actually, which was even
so with
before
Vedic meditation, the mantra, it's like you said that you just say in your head. So it's not like an om. It's not like it's specific
so
to individuals.
So mantras can come in different. So a lot of times we use japa mantras. So japa mantras are mantras that we say out loud. It's like Om Namah Shivaya, like Hari Om, all those types of Hare Krishna, like all those kind of ones. You can say them out loud, or you can actually say them internally. But they're not transcending technique mantras, right? So the bija mantras are a certain set of mantras that are designed, basically, they're actually sounds which are the essence of devas, or different we've got like Shiva and Shakti and Ganesh and like all those kind of like deities that exist in the Hindu tradition. And they're not like gods, but they're actually like beings that exist in other dimensions, and if you actually really do certain practices, you can have the experience of that being. But also the sounds that come to them aren't actually the names of those gods either. They're actually the essence of what they represent. Like, for example, like Lakshmi is the goddess of abundance, and Saraswati is the goddess of knowledge, and Ganesh is the remover of obstacles, and Shiva is the destruction operator and also creation. So it's like, this whole beautiful thing. Like, some techniques teach you like, oh, they don't have any meaning. When you start releasing stress from the nervous system and you start understanding what this practice actually does, it starts to expand your awareness into like so many different aspects, where you don't realize that you're reacting to everything that's happening to you in your life instead of responding to everything that's happening to you in your life. Like, it gives you this like much bigger sense of calm. You understand, normally when things happen to you, you don't really sweat the small stuff so much anymore. Like, you just kind of like have a much more ability. You don't really get as sick as much, because 90% of all disease comes from stress in the nervous system. When you're doing a daily practice, which is releasing stress from the nervous system, like, you're just a lot healthier. You also know what to put into your mouth. Like, when I was doing my cancer journey, if we even go back to that, like when I was meditating a lot more, like I almost knew when I came out every day, like what I had to eat. My body was actually craving certain things, and I was going like, oh, today I need to eat more spinach, and I need to eat like more.
And because
whatever.
you were so tuned into it, you were like, oh, like, whereas normally you just like jump up, get in the rat race, jump in the car at 6:30, throw whatever coffee and all that stuff in, and not be in tune with your body. But because you're waking up with that practice. Can you talk to me, because I think this is something that I go through and maybe other people experience as well, like just like you said, when you have that daily practice, when you wake up in the morning, you've got that 20 minutes of meditation or whatever your practice is, right? What is it, do you think, that makes people go into like that place of like resistance towards it? Like, if I said to somebody who's never done to meditation before, and I was like, oh, like meditation's so great, and these are the benefits. Like, and I'm saying this for myself as well. Like, there's periods in my life where I meditate every morning, and those periods in my life are the happiest days of my life. But something will happen and I slide away from it, and then it's almost like harder to get back on the train. What do you think that's about?
I think that sometimes like meditation does make you feel good. So you going like, oh, this is really great. And then when we're feeling good, we think that, oh, okay, it did its job, like this is where I am. And then all of a sudden, like obviously because we build up when we're meditating, we're building up adaptation energy. So it's like, we're getting rid of the stress from the nervous system. We might have a few things happen to us, but we've still got like a battery. Like I like to think of it like a battery. So we've got this beautiful battery power that kind of like is happening. And but when we stop meditating, the battery starts like going down in power. Then most of the times, then we hit this bit and we start reacting to life instead of responding to life again. And then we go like, oh, actually, I was feeling better when I was meditating every day. So we do things like that. So I think that that's why a consistent 20-minute twice a day practice is a perfect householder technique, because you're always continually filling up your battery so that you're not getting to that point again where you're doing it. It's not a tactic like to help you get through a certain period. It's like something that you do, like cleaning your teeth. And if you do it every
Yeah.
single day as a practice, then it's not a practice anymore. Like for me, meditation isn't something that I have to really think about. Like I get up in the morning, I like go to the bathroom, I have a drink of water, and I literally sit on this couch, like pretty much in the corner where I'm sitting now, and I meditate there. Like that's
Yeah.
the first thing I do do not pass go, do not look at my phone, do not do anything, just do that.
Yeah.
Like that way there, it like sets me up. I go into this beautiful state, because if you can do it in the morning when you first wake up as well, you can normally get back into that transcendent state pretty
Yeah.
quickly, because that mantra kind of drops you off in that space between waking and sleeping and dreaming. So it's like, in normal people who don't meditate, you pass through that slot within 3 seconds. But if you meditate, it's kind of dropping you off there. So your mind has this memory of like, oh, I know this place. So if you don't distract yourself with anything when you first get up, you can normally go to that space pretty quickly. But you're doing it always sitting up in a chair, so you're still conscious of the sounds and that are
Yeah.
around you and stuff like that. But then you're not, when you don't do it consistently, then it's just like anything. Like it's like if you were a tennis player and you were a pro tennis player, and then you just stopped training because like you just did tournaments, but you didn't actually do the thing. It's the same thing. You just start losing it. So it's like anything, but if you can incorporate it into your daily routine, like yesterday afternoon was another good example. I had to go and do all this stuff in the morning. I was coming out. I had to do, I do astrology readings as well, and I had to do this reading at like 3 o'clock. But I was feeling like tired, and I thought, I don't like doing readings with people when I'm tired, so I feel a responsibility for that. But it was like 2 o'clock, and I thought, oh, it's actually not till 3, so that's great. So I went and sat down and I meditated for half an hour. And then I came out of that and I was like, because that 20 minutes or half an hour that I did is equal to 3 to 5 hours of like deep rest. So it's always really good to do that. But you don't realize like how much how this beautiful tool that you have in your tool belt, once you have it, can really help you like navigate different parts of your life. You don't lay down and have a sleep or whatever. Like you just sit down and close your eyes and, go inward and start
Yeah.
tapping into that beautiful heart-centered awareness, and it starts helping you in so many different areas of your life. That's why I really love it, because
Absolutely.
I watch it change people's lives every week.
But yeah, it almost seems to me that it's kind of like when you're meditating, you're so tapped into source every day, and that's why you feel good, right? You're just not in that resistance anymore. And when I've stopped, from my experience, I feel like it's like my ego is kind of like going, nah, stay over here, like don't meditate. Because, this is where we stay. We stay in this world of the human experience, which is like scarcity and separation, and you've got limitations here. And it's so interesting. As soon as you meditate, it's just like this vibration lifts, like you just are open to way more possibilities. So
Well, the
I
egoic mind
definitely,
is,
you
the
go.
egoic mind is designed. We need the egoic mind, but the thing is, we don't want him to be the driver. And the egoic mind's designed to keep us, it wants to stay safe. So it keeps us in the ever repeating known of life. That's how we kind of like describe it. We just always going around in a circle. Like, we wake up, we go to work, we come home, we cook dinner, we watch the block, we go back home. Do you know what I mean? Like, and then, then we go to sleep. And then on Tuesdays, we do tennis. And then on like Fridays, we might go for a drink with our friends. And then we just kind of live for the weekend. But when we're meditating, the egoic mind gets disrupted. It doesn't like the fact that we meditate, because he starts to lose control and he starts getting moved to like the passenger seat of life. And but when we're meditating regularly, even now I still get it. Like I still have that voice that goes like, don't bother doing your practice today. You know, it's okay. You already
I'm
did. You
glad
did a
it's
long.
not just
You did an
me.
extra 10 minutes this morning. Like, don't bother doing the afternoon one. Do you know what I mean? But it's true. Like, it does come and like, but only because like it doesn't want to lose control. It wants to keep you in the ever repeating known, the safe, the thing that we consider safe. It's the same way of like taking leaps, like I did when I like went to go into learn to become a teacher and stuff like that. It's the same thing. If we listen to that mind, and if you really think about it, this is I had a conversation with someone about this yesterday. It was about um when someone goes like, "There's two people inside of me," and I was like, "Yeah, there's like two. Like, who do you talk to when you're talking to yourself? Do you know what I mean? You're actually
Mm,
talking to your egoic mind. Actually, that's who you're
mhm,
talking to.
mhm,
It's
mhm.
almost like your spirit, or like someone is like talking to like your soul is like talking to the other driver, and you've got to be able to say like, "Oi, get out of that seat. That's my seat."
Yeah.
And I think that
Yeah.
that's what happens. I feel like the egoic mind tricks you into thinking like, "No, you don't need to do it because you're feeling really good now." But actually, if you consistently keep doing it, it just gets better.
Yes.
Right?
It
Rather than always like
does.
going backwards and forwards and backwards and forwards and backwards and forwards, it's like you just keep going forwards.
Yeah. And I think the egoic mind is, that's with all the love and compassion and for it in the world, because it essentially is just a collection of your experiences of life. So there's a lot of like inner child stuff in there as well. And so that's why it's like really important, I think, not to hate the ego and be like, oh, I just
Mm,
want to kill my ego. It's like you can't, no one's going to kill their ego. Everyone's got an ego. Even the Dalai Lama has an ego. He has an identity, right? So,
yeah.
um, but it's just like even that voice when you like say you start like a meditation practice or you start like a health plan or you go to the gym, the reason that you will sabotage yourself is the ego. It's not any other reason. It will be old stories. Oh, look, you've hit your goal. Okay, let's go and smash some pizza and a full fat Coke. It's like the ego is like, cool, we did it. Okay, let's just, and that's all that happens. So whenever anyone says to me about sabotage or anything like that, I'm just like, there's just a story in your ego that is happening. And I know from my own experience, like you can be in the driving seat when you are meditating and when you have that daily practice. And it's about like not beating yourself up if you like miss the daily practice like once or twice, but just recognizing if you let it go for too long, you will start to slip. You'll start to slide down. And that's the ego that's getting you to slide back.
100%. Yeah. It's
Yeah.
trying to take
Yeah.
control back, and you're like, no, you're not going to win.
No, you're not. Get over here. Come on. In the loving embrace, come over here. But as your soul, I'm just going to cuddle you and then let's go where we're meant to be going. So,
That's right.
so we touched a little bit on Vedic astrology as well. So what is Vedic astrology? Like if I was coming to you and I was like, Geoff, I've heard you do this Vedic astrology thing, with a lot more respect, but how would you explain it to me?
Well, that was the other thing as well that I was just going to say, like, when I put that first string in my bow of like Vedic meditation teacher, then I realized like, oh, I can't just do like one thing. Then I learned Himalayan breathwork with Anand and did like my 200-hour yoga teacher training, all that stuff as well, using Kriya and that stuff. And then I ended up, I've always been interested in astrology, like from a really young age. And then, and I think that then I went and learned how to do Vedic astrology. So with Vedic astrology, how it's different from Greek and Western astrology is that we look at what star sign was actually rising on the easternmost horizon when you were born, because that gives you a much bigger flavor of like what your life is like. So it's like what sign was actually coming up on the horizon at the time that you were born. And if you look at Greek and Western astrology, it mainly looks at what sign your sun was in, not what
Mm,
sign, not actually what sign was coming up. So that in Vedic astrology, it's known as your rising sign or your ascending sign. And
okay.
that's the one that really determines your personality in this lifetime. Like I've had lots of people who've done like Western astrology readings and I go like, oh, this is actually a rising sign. And they go like, oh, I thought it was this. And I go like, oh, it's actually this. And then you tell them, they go like, oh, that actually sounds much more like me. And we're connected to the planets by the chakra system of the body. So like Saturn's the root chakra, Jupiter's the second chakra, Mars is the third, Venus is the heart, Mercury's the throat, and then Sun and Moon. And then there's also two other shadow planets in Vedic astrology, which are the north node and the south node of the moon, but they're known as Rahu and Ketu. So the mythology goes that the short version is that when the gods were giving out the immortal nectar to live forever, this dragon stuck into the line, and the dragon was like, I want some of that. And they're like, you can't have any, you're a dragon. But as he was drinking the immortal nectar, they sliced him in half. And so the head went to one end of the chart and the tail went to the other. So they always aspect each other in the chart. But the tail, which is K2, represents what past life karma you came into work on in this lifetime. And the head represents expansion into what you're supposed to be doing. So if you don't work on what you came into work on, then sometimes you're always chasing something, never feeling satisfied because you're just a head with no body. But if you do work on what you came in to work on, then you can like ride the head of the dragon for like full expansion into your dharma.
Okay,
And so
I've
with
got
Vedic
so
astrology,
many questions.
yeah. But with Vedic astrology, it's like it really helps you understand. It's like the blueprint of your life. Wherever like, there's 12 houses, which are the 12 star signs, it really, wherever the planets are in which house, which is which sign, determine like how the energy of that particular planet's like going to play out in your life. And each house represents a different part of your life, like family you're born into, siblings, like career, like mum and dad. You can see the whole life in there. And so, you know, it shows you the blueprint of like what you're supposed to be doing for your life, like what energies you've played with, whether they're low value energies or high value energies. And then the choices that you make in your life determine how the karma plays out. Right. So are you choosing the high value or are you choosing the low value? And I think that, you know, in Vedic astrology as well, we also have nakshatras, which are like the little 27 little constellations that go around. So if anyone ever reads like my full moon posts on Instagram and stuff like that as well, like I talk about the nakshatra that the full moon is in, because that in each sign there's like 2.5 nakshatras. So there's like other little tiny signs like Sagittarius and, you know, Cancer and all that kind of stuff. They're actually known as Barney and like, you know, Revati and stuff like that. They're known as different names and they're all represented by same thing, like the archer or a lotus or like whatever, like just made in the stars. And then we also have the dasha system, which is like certain planets sit over your chart for certain periods of time. And so you might have Jupiter for 16 years and Saturn's 19 years and you have moon's 10 years and stuff like that as well. But when they change signs, like that's when something big shift happens, because it's normally moving to a different house. So a different house in your area of your life gets lit up. And that's the part that I really love the most when I do it. I kind of do it at the end of the reading when I go to people like, what happened in June of 1994? And they're like, oh my God, that's when I divorced my husband. And like, you know, well, that's when I had my first child, or that's when I moved to New York, you know, and then go, oh yeah, then what happened in like, you know, like 16 years after that, you know, like when you just go, like, oh, that's when I, you know, decided that I wanted to change my career and do something else. But it's because like, and when you tell them the exact dates of like when things happen, they'll go like, wow, you know, it really makes people like understand that there's like definitely, you know, certain areas, like we all have like a certain path. We're all here for evolution, but we're actually, every single person that's alive and breathing also has a purpose. We're all part of like this one big beautiful living, breathing, you know, earth. And we all have to understand that like we all have a purpose, like, you know, and that and this really helps you navigate that. That's what I really love. It's like this beautiful science that helps you really navigate your chart. And I'd probably do 2 or 3 readings a day most days. And it's been something that I never thought that would become the thing that I was probably well known for, you know, like it was something that I was doing as part of a coaching program that I thought like, oh, when I coach someone, if I just look at their chart, they won't have to tell me what's wrong with them because I'm already going to know, you know? And with astrology, you look at different periods of your life, and there's like harder periods and bits when the apple cart gets shook. But a lot of times it's trying to move you. Like, I'll give you an example. Like when I actually look at my chart, I was able to, like, after I'd studied it, I was able to go back to go like, okay, well, what was happening when I had cancer and I lost my job and all that stuff. And I was going through this like 7.5 year period called Sadasati. Sadasati means 7.5. But it was actually like a time in my life when I see it happen on any person's life. In fact, most people who get readings from me are either in the beginning of that period, the middle of that period, or the end of that period. Like that's the majority of it, because people are going like, my life's being turned upside down. I need to understand what's going on. And it's very interesting because when I look back at mine, I was going like, oh, that was actually all happened right at the beginning of that 7.5 year period. And when you think about it, it was actually really almost like 7 years from the time like I had it, went through it, like went back to work at Foxtel, went to India, did whatever, and then my life changed. Like, and you know, and that's when I was going like, oh, and then I was like fully, it's almost like one book of my life closed, like which was that book, and now it wasn't like a chapter, it was like a whole new version of like me. and the person that I was meant to step into. But I had to have that whole experience to understand myself on this side of it, because I find that when I teach meditation, or if I even do reading sometimes to help people understand things, I teach in story form. As you can tell, I probably
Mm-hmm.
talk a lot. I'm Gemini ascendant, so Mercury is the lord of my ascendant, so it's all about communication and talking. So sometimes I just can't shut up, but it's like, um, yeah,
Yeah.
that's part of the thing. So yeah, that's like in a nutshell, I suppose.
So, I mean, just to sort of nut it all down, because I mean, it sounds like, and the way that I'm perceiving it is like when you look at somebody's chart, it's almost like, you're looking at their sun, their moon, they're ascending, they're rising, and it's almost like that is the blueprint. It's almost like the crown of their head, right? That's coming through, and that is the blueprint. And so, based upon your time of birth, your date of birth, obviously whatever's going on with the planets at the time, is that what determines our karma, do you think? That in
Yes.
terms, yeah, okay. So
So
can we
your
talk about
first breath is
karma?
like the
Yeah.
time that we normally look at. Like, obviously we don't really know whether the nurse wrote it down on your first breath, but I mean,
Yeah.
it's only within minutes of it anyway, right?
9:51.30. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like, we first breath to last breath, because obviously the first thing we do when we come into this world is take a breath, and then the last thing we do is take a breath. And actually, that's the time when we also disconnect from the mother, as well as when we take our first breath. Like, so that's when
Hmm.
we're like independent. The soul is like in the body, and all that stuff. So
Yeah.
if we look at that, and then depending on where the planets are, like we definitely bring through karma from other lifetimes as well, and so you can see, because that depends on what house K2 is in. So if we look at what house he's in, then we can go like, oh, okay, like it might be about that. Sometimes, like for example, if K2 is in the fifth house is like children, like your children in this lifetime. So if there's planets in that house, like normally if people haven't even had kids yet, I'm thinking like, oh, that person's going to have two kids, going to have a boy and a girl. Like if they haven't, if I don't know anybody, sometimes I go like, do you have a boy and a girl? And they go like, yes. Do you know what I mean? Like it's like that, because you can see that. Or do you have two boys? And but there's other things, like if K2's in there, which is like the past life planet, a lot of times it means that you had lots of kids already in your previous lifetime, and your dharma in this lifetime is actually maybe not to have children. And
Wow.
and so if you want to have children, it's almost like a choice. But a lot of times when I'm finding people that are going through IVF, for example, and things like that as well, like they have K2 in the fifth house. So if you
So
want to have kids,
they've had children in a previous lifetime, or
yeah,
the
they've like,
K2
it
is
normally
like,
means like they've kind of been like had lots of children before. But a lot of times, if they want to have children in this lifetime, you still can, because we have the power of choice. But the
mm,
difference is that you have to, because some people will have it there, but they've had kids anyway. But if you look at like when they had them, it was actually when the transit of K2 was happening. You can actually look during certain, because planets sit in our chart for a certain period of time, and the other ones are always like moving around. So if you can find the window of opportunity of like when it is that you could pull through a child, then
yeah,
that's it. But a lot of times with people that have that, they're like people of the world, like they're like living in ashrams, or they're like, they're like the world's their family, and
yeah,
it's very
yeah,
interesting. Like you end up finding like a lot of people like that, or just sometimes it's just part of like, the role of having children isn't really part of like what they're here for in this life, but if they wanted to have that experience, they can have it.
yeah,
It's just all
yeah,
about finding the window. And I definitely see lots of people in IVF, for example, who do that. But if they can see an astrologer, a lot of times it can help them a lot, because you can go like, oh, actually, you should try to do it during this window of time. Like else. I mean,
wow,
I don't. It's not something that I advertise to do that, because I don't want that pressure. Before, to help them who I know have been doing IVF, we go like, just try this window. Like I don't know, like you can just try it. And do you know what I mean? Like, but if you can have a look and go like, well, you know what, this is actually the best window that you should try. I feel like, why not try to line it up with,
yeah. I'm actually
what-
really curious now because I've had my reading done. And obviously I don't have children, and biologically, I'm just turned 46, so I'm not really in that arena of going through that. But there's always this like little question in the back of my mind where I'm like, will I adopt? I've always had this idea of being a mum, but I also think it could be a mum to many situation, like I've got very maternal energy. I, you know, love taking care of people, and maybe I'll just create something different. But I'm definitely going to look into that because, yeah, that'd just be interesting just to see if that the adoption or, other options are available. But yeah, it's very interesting. I didn't realize you could see all that. And what do you find people come to you the most for astrology readings? Is it because they're going through a heartbreak and they just want to know it's going to be okay?
Like, people definitely do it in relationships because they do relationship readings, or they go like, when should I be looking if I'm going to get into one again? Um, Career, definitely. I kind of like have and current transits is good because I think most people now, like, lots of people who've had a reading already definitely like to have another one. A lot of times when I do their first initial reading, I'll often do like, I'll add on a bit of current transit stuff to go like, okay, in the next 6 months, like, this is probably what you should be concentrating on,
Yeah.
because I can give you remedies and all that stuff as well. Like, we've got all mantras, that all the planets have mantras. Like, there's different breathwork techniques you can do because we can use different breath techniques to activate the chakra system of the body, because we're connected to the planets by the chakras. So it's about how do we align our energy so that we can tap into the highest value of like what's coming in. And I remember I had this one girl who would, like, I taught her to meditate a while ago, and then she just got this reading. I didn't really know much about her life, but I knew she had 3 kids and stuff. And she came she was in her room, and we were doing this reading. But like halfway through, I was telling her about, oh, you've got like Rahu in your house with the father. I was going like, it's like, I said, it looks like he left your life when you were 2. And she's like going, yeah, he did leave when I was 2. I said, but feel like he's coming back. There's a window of opportunity where he's like going to come back into your life probably. I said, he probably will come back. She's like, oh, he's trying to come back now. And I was like, oh, really? And she's like, yeah, like, he's back in my life. She goes, but I want nothing to do with him. And I was like, why? And she's like, oh, because he left us when we were 2. And I said, oh, but you've actually got this other thing where your mum was supposed to play both roles in your life. She has son in her house in the 4th house, which is also the house of mother. I said, like, she's like that. So she was actually supposed to be the mother and the father, because son also represents our father. And I said, so she was supposed to actually play both roles in your life. And they said, but I said, your dad's like coming back into your life now because there's still something that's not finished actually. So, you can't just dismiss it. And she's going like, no, I don't want him in my life. He's trying to meet his grandchildren and all this kind of stuff. And I was going like, how did you think I knew that he left when you were 2? And she goes, yes, how did you know that? And I was like, well, it's here. Like, it's in the chart. He wasn't supposed to be there, and your mum was supposed to raise you, and now he's supposed to come back. I said, but you can't karmically, you know, a lot of times with people's relationships in their life, they forget that their parents are the first relationship that they have, and that actually they're the ones who birthed you into this earth and created you, and you chose them to be your parents for whatever reason. And as long as we can see them in that, we don't have to be best friends with them, but as long as we can see them in a state of consciousness where we go like, oh, they just did how they knew best, and but I still love them for bringing me here. Always think about everyone with love, because you don't want to take it into another lifetime to have to work it out.
Yeah.
And so her mother was knocking on the door after a while, because we'd been like an hour and a half, nearly 2 hours, like, in this reading, and because she needed to go out, but the daughter was like, go away. I'm like, because we really went deep onto this whole thing, because she asked me a lot of questions about it, and whenever I feel like she had a really good understanding, and I felt like I was breaking through. So I gave her more time, and she ended up leaving. That we left, and she was happy. But 2 days later, I got an email from the mother, and the mother said, I don't know who you are, but I just had to thank you because I asked my daughter for your email because, like, I was knocking on the door. So first of all, I wanted to apologize for being rude and trying to make her stop. She goes, but I was looking after the kids while she was having that reading with you, and I needed to go somewhere. She goes, but the person who went into that room and the person who came out of that room was a completely different person. She said, because for the last, like, year since her father's been back in our lives, like, he's been trying to come over to, like, meet his grandkids. He's never met his grandchildren. And we've been trying to do something, but she won't have a bar of it. She goes, but as soon as she came out of that room, she told me to call her father and ask him to come over for dinner that night. And so he did, and he's already been over for dinner 2 nights in a row now, and he's already met his grandchildren. And she said, so I just wanted to thank you for putting our family back together, and I'm just so grateful for, like, whatever you said. I don't even know what you said or did, and I don't care. I just wanted to say thank you to you for doing that for us.
Yeah,
So,
that is incredible.
I mean, it was just things like that. Sometimes if you can have an understanding of, like, that's why I love that example, because I thought it gives you a beautiful understanding of how we need to look at what choices we make. We need to look at, things, people can change and things can happen, and sometimes things come around. It is all about, we make choices. Our choices determine how the karma plays out. You know, had she not had that reading, she might still not have any thing with her dad because she was holding on to something that had happened when she was 2 years old. But actually,
Yeah.
what happened when she was 2 was supposed to happen.
So can I ask a question? So it's almost like, and I please correct me on this, but it's almost like that blueprint that we come in with, you know, that time, the planets, everything the way it's aligned. That's almost like what you're seeing is kind of, I don't know if I want to call it fate or it's the karma on it's the fate on, you know, with the
It's your
planets, but
dharma. It's your
it's your
dharma.
dharma. Okay. So what is dharma? Just explain dharma.
Dharma is like your life's purpose. Dharma
Mm-hmm.
is like the life that you were meant to live, you know? So you can definitely see the ups and downs, you can see where the challenges are coming in, you can see the time periods when the challenges are coming in. And then, you know, it's the choices that you make that determine how the karma plays out. Are you choosing a high value of that planet when that's transiting through that certain thing, or are you choosing a low value of that planet? Like,
Yeah.
you know, and so it's about if you know what the high value and low value is, and you can go like, oh, I feel like this, I need to be reaching for that. But that's when like an integrated practice comes in where like meditation helps you tap into yourself so that you know when you're making decisions about things that are, you know, you need to have an integrated practice. It's not just one thing. Like
Yeah.
if you meditate, you have an astrological chart, and then I teach, you know, breath work and stuff like that as well, which is also about aligning the energy systems of the body as well. I feel like, you know, I feel like if we have an integrated practice, then you use whatever modalities you need, like to be able to like, you know, understand you're journeying through time. We're just really
Yeah.
journeying through time, you know? So
Yeah.
it's like this beautiful thing, but it's like understanding yourself like from all aspects, like really helps you to make better decisions in what you're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I feel like, I know we've spoken about this before, it's kind of like that macro. I feel what you do and what your work is and your gifts are is allowing people to see that macro level, like that, you know, even in that example you just gave about that girl with her relationship with her, you know, her dad, it's like you've allowed her to kind of see, no, this is the way your mum's life was meant to go. This is the way your dad's, he was meant to leave. It's this macro level. On a human level, we're on the micro level, right? So this is where the blame game is, and like uh, and I'm you know, obviously being really aware that there are some horrific things that some parents do, and maybe that they don't deserve to be in your life, and I know you touched on that, but it's about, even if you can't love and honor them for who they are, it's about having that gratitude for the fact that they, through them you came to be here, and then this is where your life begins, right? But it's even in that experience, like she got to understand that on a human level, she was on the micro level, she was like angry towards her dad. She was in the human experience, the ego experience of having this anger, and he's, you know, he left us, all that hurt. But I think what you did is you allowed her to see the macro level, the overarching bigger picture, which is, this is the way it was meant to be. What are you going to do with this?
Yeah,
What's your
100%.
choice? And I
Yeah.
think this is the game of the human game, or the soul game. It's kind of like the soul understands why all this is orchestrated, and I feel that's what you're doing, is allowing people to see that bigger soul energy picture. um but yeah, it's very hard. I mean, I've been stuck in the human game for a very long time, and only even though I thought I was like, yeah, I'm so connected to source like all the time, and I totally know what's going on, and then you just slip backwards sometimes. Well, in my experience, I slip out of it. I slip into the ego game, and I sort of can feel myself going into that blame game. So it's like,
I think it's all part of it though, but it's all when we do that, it's designed to teach us lessons. You know, the difference is like we're really just consciousness having an experience through a body, right? We're not
hmm
really when we die, like we don't go to heaven or hell, like we're already in heaven. Do you know what I mean? Like we
hmm
just drop the
hmm
body and our consciousness actually remains. But it's actually like how much can you raise your state of consciousness so that you can really have the full experience of what is actually here.
yeah,
Hell is actually really like the ever repeating known of life. Like how many lifetimes have you come back and gone around and around and around in a circle and like, you know, and not
yeah,
actually done any evolutionary process. You
yeah,
know, I feel like if you understand that you're only here for evolution and that your job really is to have a good life, but also upgrade yourself as much as you can by doing practices and doing things. Like, there's a reason why they've been around for thousands of years. If you read Patanjali's Yoga Sutras, or you read any of those types of books, Yogananda's like Autobiography of a Yogi is a good book. If you want to start on a book, start on that book.
The Autobiography of a Yogi.
Yeah, it's
that
called
one? Yeah.
Autobiography of a Yogi. Yeah, Yogananda is like his story is amazing. I reckon it's like I've given that book to so many people because I just feel like it's such an amazing way, an entry level into understanding like how life works and how we just need to be connected to ourselves. Like, we're all connected to each other anyway, but it's like about how do you make sure that I'm the best version of myself, so that we're all here to help and evolve and lift each other. It's not about us
Absolutely.
against them and all that stuff. Like, I think when you see all the things that happen, that's why I really love astrology like so much. Like, I feel like it's been this thing where it's never wrong. That's what I find really interesting. Like, I've never done anyone's chart because I have people just, I'm just get me through Google, because I always go like, how did you find me? Like, oh, I just Google. And I think, thanks, Google. And but it's like, I don't know them. I've never met them before in my life. They literally come on a screen like this, or we're on Zoom, and we like do it, and they always go like, "Oh my god, like I feel like you know me better than I know myself," like, and it's just like, it's never wrong. Like, that's the thing. Like, it's not like I've never had one person out of like however many hundreds that I've done that have gone like, "That's not me."
Yeah.
They always go
I
like,
don't
"Wow,
know where you got that information.
yeah." They always go like, "Wow, that's like really mean," And I think that it really shows you that the reason why I love doing it is because a lot of times people are comparing themselves to other people all the time, thinking that they need to be more like that person that they like, or their friend, for example. But actually, when you understand that, like, oh, these are the energies that I brought into this lifetime to play with, and these are the ones that I have to use and upgrade, and these are the areas of my life that I need to maybe focus on and make sure that I'm choosing a high value. And when these particular things happen, then you realize like, oh, this is who I am. I can let go of like any attachment to trying to be somebody else, and I can just be me and try
Yeah.
to be the best version of me possible, because now you
Yeah.
know what to reach for when you're feeling a certain way.
Yeah. Yeah. Without because, I think that's the other thing. I think people, from my experience as well, it's like, who am I being? Like, who is the essence of me? And the essence of each and every single one of us is love, right? We all come from the same place. We are all one. And we are everything. Like, I am everything, you are everything. It's just this resistance of the human experience and life experiences. I always call it the fog. It kind of stops your light shining because you've got this fog in the way of like, oh, I've got to be like this person, or why don't I have this, or if I only had this, I'd be happy, and all these kind of things. We're just surrounded by this fog, and the more work that we can do to clear it, the more that light gets to shine, in my experience. I want to ask you, I actually heard this the other day, and I love it, and I just love to get your opinion on it as well. And it was basically, I was watching this YouTube video, and this guy was talking about consciousness, right? And he was explaining that when we breathe in, and I'm sort of tapping into your Vedic, kind of your Himalayan breath work here. When we breathe in, whatever this is here, we call it air, right, in front of us. But if I held my nose like this and I didn't breathe for 3 or 4 minutes, right, I would lose consciousness. And so this guy was actually saying you would go unconscious if you stop breathing. So we call this thing air, but he was saying, what if it's consciousness?
Yeah, I've never really heard it like that before,
I
but
know. And I just
yeah.
heard about it, and I was like, I'm just going to throw it out, because when we stop breathing, we go unconscious. We cut ourselves off from consciousness.
Well,
What do you think about that?
the first thing we do when we come into this world is take a breath, and the last thing we do is take our last breath, right?
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
think that, that's why we actually have, but it's coming back now with like Wim Hof and people like that as well, where we are like connected to the breath. We have to understand that, like, different techniques and different things will give you access to different dimensions within yourself. Like, that's what I was saying as well, when when we're talking about the different deities and stuff like that, like you can sit with a deity. Like I've done these 90-minute breathwork journeys or whatever, where we invoke a different deity, and that deity sits with you the whole day. Like you can see it when you've got your eyes closed and stuff like that as well. Like you can definitely invoke states using your breath, and people do it all the time. And I
Yeah.
think that, it's not so much about consciousness being the breath, but I feel like the breath, pranayama is life force energy. So it is,
Hmm.
it's known as pranayama. So pranayama is life force energy. And without it, we're not alive. So I suppose technically it is kind of consciousness. But we need to actually fill our body with pranayama, with prana. So, because prana is energy that moves upwards and apana is energy that moves downwards. So it's like, it's always about how do we, if we're alive, that's what I said as well before, if we're alive and breathing, then we have a purpose, like
Hmm.
we're supposed to actually be here. We've got a purpose.
There is a big awakening happening. I think there are a lot of people really starting to realize, like, just the egoic mind a lot more, and starting to recognize those patterns in themselves and how that does pull you down. But I think all of like the practices that you offer, I mean, all of that I think is a massive opportunity um, for people to wake up. It's a brilliant combination that you've got with the astrology, with the meditation, and then with the breath work as well. It's like the full spectrum of here's the door to
Yeah,
consciousness.
here's the
Come
door.
on in.
Yeah.
Come on in. I've
Well,
made
I
it
feel
really
like, I
easy
did
for
the work
you.
though. I feel like, I
Yeah.
feel like for me, I'm someone, I don't teach something until I've kind of done it myself. And then I
Yeah.
realize like, a lot of times I go and do a practice or I do something and I think like, wow, this is actually really good. Like this would be good to teach people. And,
Hmm.
what's happening in humanity right now, you can see even like, for example, on March 30th is when we have 6 planets lining up in a row in one particular sign. It hasn't happened for a really long time.
What
Um,
does that mean? What's going to
It
happen
just
to
means
us,
that there's like
Geoff?
gonna be, we're also moving from like, Saturn's changing thing as well. He changes every 2.5 years. He's moving on that same day that there's actually an eclipse. It just means that there's like gonna be some shift. Like you can see at the moment in humanity, like the first shift really happened when all the planets were on one side in 2020. April, what happened? COVID. Do you know what I mean? Like so it was like that was something that like affected humanity. I remember looking at that. We were looking at that as when we were studying stuff, like going like, oh, something's going to happen around that time. I wonder what it's going to be. And then I remember like we were kind of into COVID and going like, oh, this is what it is. But because we knew it was something that was happening in a current transit that was going to affect the world, it wasn't going to be something that's like just in a country. It was actually like affecting the world. So that was the first like kind of awakening event, that kind of like starts to happen. But that
Mm.
was where it really like showed people like to me it showed people's state of consciousness. Do you know what I mean? Like
Mm.
it really showed you like how you responded or reacted to that particular situation. And I kind of looked at it with fascination because I'd already seen from the astrological point of view. I was kind of looking at going like, oh, okay, like that's what's happening. And I just made myself available to do like group meditation. I did group meditation every night, and all that kind of stuff as well, just to try to help people navigate that. And then this is like another shift that's kind of happening now, where I feel like if you look at, American politics is like a really good example of like, because a lot of times the consciousness state of the country is like by the leader. So you look at the leader and that's the consciousness state of the country. And I know that people in America go like, oh my God, you can't say that. But actually, if you forget about Donald Trump, the person, what he's done and who he is, like forget about the person. You need to look at the energy of like what he's actually doing. Like he's going in and like he's almost like causing Saraswati in the
He
world.
is
Do you know what I mean?
shaking
Like
that
he's
place
shaking the
up.
apple cart,
Yeah.
but actually what he's doing is like bringing things to light so that they can be deleted or so that we can understand them, which is why he's released the JFK files. And while he's done that, like they've been hidden for so long, but why? Why can't we just know what happened? Do you
Hmm.
know what I mean? Like as humanity, like we're all humans, like it's all part of it. Affected our whole reality. Like we still make movies about it and we still do whatever. Like why can't we just know like what happened? And it's like
Hmm.
that with
Fascinating, isn't it?
everything, like I just think that forget about the person. Like we can't look at the person. Like we've got to look at the energetic thing, or maybe just look at even how it's affecting humanity, where it is like it's causing us to look at all parts of our lives. It's causing us as individuals, but it's causing countries to look at each other. It's causing like everyone. Like who else was going to come in there and be agitated to do that?
Mm-hmm.
If the whole world's based on maintenance, creation, destruction. If we don't have,
Yeah.
if we stay in maintenance, creation never happens out of maintenance. It only happens after destruction. The
Yeah.
same way that a fire goes through a forest and the pods open because they only open when there's like a certain amount of heat and they haven't opened for 20 years or whatever it is. You know what I mean? Like, so nature's built on that too, and so is whatever's happening right now. And so I think that humanity is going through a big turning point. I feel like a lot of the readings that I do for people lately, like you asked me, just kind of came to me, was that, people come to me saying like, I feel lost. That's
Mm.
probably the theme of the last 2 months. Like
Yeah.
everyone goes like, I don't know what's wrong with me. I'm here with to see you because I feel lost. Because everyone knows, and I feel like the energy that's coming into the planet now is actually waking people up. Like people are definitely waking up, and
Yeah.
their consciousness states rising without them even really having to meditate or do stuff. But that they're
Mm-hmm.
starting to get drawn towards like, oh, I need to meditate or I need to do something. And they know that it's almost like they also know that they have a purpose as well, right? So they're going like, well,
Yeah.
I feel a bit lost, so I don't really know exactly what I'm supposed to be doing. Like, I don't really like what I'm doing. I feel like I need to do this, but they're also scared to go take the leap. So that's what it's like. We'll learn to meditate. It helps you tap into your inner bliss state, do some integrated practice, like do this breath work. I give them remedies as well, like to try to help them navigate through that period.
Yeah.
And I think that, that's what's happening. We're waking up as humanity. I think you will find, it would be good to look back on this later on in time, because I really feel like if we fast forward like 10 years in time and we see where humanity ends up with like, whatever, we'll probably look back on the Donald Trump years and go like, actually, we needed him to do that. We might not like what he represented as a person, but actually what he did to agitate the world to help us, like, to cause new creation that might happen
Yeah.
after he leaves.
It's almost like he's come in, he's just pulling the weeds up, but by the roots this
Yeah.
time,
He's
and
just going
just
like, what's
like,
this one
yeah,
for? Like, oh, you've been
yeah.
doing that for like that time? Like, we don't need that anymore. Chuck it away. It's never about other. And if you upgrade your own consciousness state and you just worry about yourself and you do that, you can always navigate any challenges with ease. That's actually the secret to life, actually. You
Say that
update,
again.
you
Say that
upgrade,
again.
if you upgrade your own consciousness state, so you do the
Mm-hmm.
practices and you do what you need to do, it helps you understand like everything that ever happens in life. And by you doing that as well, it's sending a ripple out into the world as well. Like,
Yeah.
it's, you're starting to affect, imagine the people that you come into contact with like during your life. Like, you lead by example, you upgrade your consciousness state and it starts to have a ripple effect through your family and through your friends and through like whatever, and then more people learn to meditate and more people learn to connect to themselves. Like, that's what it's designed to do, like. So, and
Yeah.
I feel like these planetary shifts that are happening now are going to cause that to happen faster.
Yeah.
And it's like people are wanting community again. I feel like after COVID, when COVID happened, everyone went online and everything was done online and everyone was happy to do everything online. Whereas now I'm finding there's been a shift, especially
Yeah.
this year and the end of last year. People are like wanting community again, where they want to come together, because like now they realize like, I'm just online all the time. I'm always swiping, or I'm working from home, or I'm doing whatever. And now they want like connection, because we are energetic beings and we need to have contact with each other to be able to, live a good life.
There's so much there, Geoff.
I know,
Thank you
sorry.
so much. No, I knew it was going to be a big one. Don't you worry. I'm like, he's got a lot of wisdom in there. You talked about individually us raising our own individual consciousness, and from there, that being the ripple effect. And that's all we can do, right? So if we're watching the news or if we're consuming, violent, whatever, it's kind of like, what would you say, what advice would you give to people to work on themselves and to raise their own consciousness?
You're not going to raise your consciousness state just by looking at a candle or, doing guided meditations. You're going to do it by having a mantra-based technique which takes you inward and being able to connect into yourself. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with those other techniques. Like, they definitely have a purpose and a time, and it's great to be contemplative and it's good to do guided meditations and stuff. But I think that, the baseline of what everyone needs to have before they do even breath work and, all that kind of stuff as well. Like, if you have a meditation technique, it's like the foundation of everything. If you can bookend your day with like meditation in the morning, meditation in the afternoon or evening, then whatever happens in between those times, it ends up becoming the one constant thing in your life that never changes, right?
Mm,
Our life is random. and we're always having different experiences, different events. We think that we control our lives, but all it takes is like, would we walk across the road and get hit by a bike, or like, and it changes our whole day kind of thing. We don't know what's going to happen. We think we know what's going to happen, but we actually don't know what's going to happen. All we're doing is living in the now. But it's like, if we can bookend our day with going from active thinking mind down to that place of transcendence and tapping into that inner bliss state and releasing stress in the nervous system and that stuff, that doesn't change. That's what really helps us like stay grounded, stay centered, stay, we start activating our inner intuition, our third eye. And like, that's really powerful practice. And I think that if you start with that baseline and then you start, adding on other integrated practices at different times when you want to, and sometimes I wake up in the morning and I've meditated and I think I don't want to do that breath work today. But you know what? I go like, no, I'm just going to sit down and do it. And, it aligns me and it makes me feel better. And I think like, oh, thank God I did that. But there was a big voice in my head trying to make me not do it. Go have a coffee. Why don't you just go for a walk instead? Like, it's like all those things. And it's just like, no, I'm going to actually connect into myself more deeper, and I think that if we understand that we're in here for evolution, that if we can just upgrade ourselves, we don't even understand how much joy, how much bliss. We stop looking externally for anything to make us happy because we're already happy. And then anything that externally that makes us happy just makes us more happy. And and I think that it's the secret to life, actually. It is the secret to life. If we understand that we can just upgrade our, set of consciousness, it's not supposed to all be sunshine and rainbows. Everything is designed to push us, to make us better, make us actually, all it is a journey of self-discovery. It's like, how do we discover more about ourselves? How do we discover more about what makes us tick? Like, what makes me happy? What makes you happy? Like, that stuff. How do we live in alignment with like, our dharma and, and have just the best possible life that we can have. We're always going to have challenges because once we hit certain points, to actually get to the next point, you have to have, I asked a nun once about, going like, oh, is there ever an end? Because, he's obviously someone who's done like a lot of work. He's like, no, that's the beautiful thing about consciousness. It doesn't ever stop. It's just continually evolving. He goes, but it's like, if you're driving a car, if you think about driving a car, like it starts going up and you do whatever, but every now and then you need to pull over on the side of the road to have a little break, and then you pull back out again and you like keep going, and you keep pulling in. And I thought it was like a really beautiful analogy because sometimes we do feel like, like even said before about not meditating anymore, or, you stop for a while. It's like that same thing. We kind of get to that point thinking like, oh yeah, like I'm here, like I've got it. I don't even need to actually meditate anymore or do whatever. And then something happened. It's like, oh, okay, like I need to get back on the wagon and kind of do it again.
And then
But
you're
a lot of
like, I
times,
feel lost. I feel stuck. I feel like, what's going on? And then it's like, just come
and I
back to the
think that whenever
practice.
anything happens, you start looking at it from a different perspective because you go, what am I supposed to be learning from this? Not like, why is this happening to me? It's like, what am I supposed to actually learn about myself from this? That's the question that changes inside your mind.
Yeah.
This is happening to me because it's trying to teach me something about
Yeah.
myself or about what I do.
Yeah.
And it's not about being a victim, because we're never a victim, actually.
Yeah. I can just add a personal, just a touch to that and just kind of say like in my, because of my dharma and, all the things that I've been through, I've had a really interesting relationship with the masculine over the years. My dad died when I was young. My mum remarried. He wasn't like the greatest sort of stepfather. And then, that kind of led me to seeking love and validation and stuff, from men. And so I would attract in, very narcissistic people. It was like a co-creation, right? I was an empath and I was the people pleaser and they were drawn to it. But for years, it's like when every relationship would end, I would just be like, why does this keep happening to me? Like, what am I doing wrong? Like, what's wrong with me? And I was in that victim mindset. And I actually like realized, and this is obviously said by doing a lot of work on this stuff, but I can now look back on every single one of those men who was in my life, even though some of them I allowed them to do, really hurt me. I can actually look back on all of them and just say thank you so much, because my journey was about recognizing my own power, my own self-worth, not finding it, it's already within us. But it was like my massive journey, I think, has actually been loving myself so much that those kind of people don't even get near me now. But it's taken me to 46 to get there. I've had a few pullovers on that road. I've stopped for petrol and Pepsi Max on the way, and polluted my body. But yeah, so I totally can see now, from being older and looking back, I can see the macro journey of my life, the umbrella of my life. And one of the quests and the journeys that I've been on has been to recognize that I am worthy, and I am love, and I am enough.
And I have a question for you then. Would you change any of that?
No, not one thing.
Exactly.
Not one thing. Even though at times it's been scary, it's been scary, and I've been to some dark places. I would not change a thing. But I've been lucky, I've been blessed. Like, people have landed in my path who've been like, hey, what about this? Hey, what about this? Hey, what about meditation? And that's been a series of choices that I've made as well. But yeah, sometimes with resistance, sometimes it's taken me longer than others, I think, in some way, because there's been so much resistance to it. And now I understand that resistance is just ego, and I'm not my ego. I'm starting to make decisions a lot faster, like choices a lot faster, feeling into it, and being more present, more conscious with my decisions. So
Beautiful.
yeah, it's a big old journey, Geoff, isn't it? My goodness.
It is, but it's part of the fun. It's like,
I know.
in Sanskrit, there's a word called lila, which means the play of life. We're just actually, actors on a stage. We're all playing our part in the play of life. Like, we're all just on a stage, like playing our character. And it's like a beautiful way to like think about it. We're just like having this beautiful experience through a body. That's why I feel like, if we can look at life with wonder and awe and go like, wow, I'm alive, I'm like in a body, then it's like, then we understand when they say your body is your temple, because actually it is the temple that's housing your consciousness, because without the body, the consciousness hasn't got anywhere to go, and we can't actually we're a 5 sensory being. And another thing that I think about, that I remember my teacher said one time, was going like, we don't even realize that we live in a world that's like magic. Like, we get a seed from a tree, we plant it in the ground, we water it, it grows, it produces mangoes, and then we eat this juicy mango. Like, it's just like magic from a seed that was like this big, that grew in the ground. We take it for granted that a seed goes in the ground and produces fruit. But we forget that, like, when you can look at life with the wonder of life and think like, oh, I can plant this seed in the ground and it's going to give me like a mango, like a juicy, juicy mango, but not once, like for a really long time,
Yeah.
And so it's like really beautiful when you start looking at life to realize like, oh, it's all just perfectly designed. Like, nature's always pushing us where we need to go. If we can tune into ourselves and, really understand that it's all just part of the road that we're on, and, it's about making the right choices, and then using tools that we have, like astrology and like breathwork and coaching and like, all those different things where we tap into people who have like done a lot of the work to help us navigate it all with a bit more grace and ease. Then that's what it's all about.
Yeah, it's gorgeous. Where can people find you, and what have you got coming up?
Well, I'll give you some exclusives, because some stuff just happened yesterday. So I teach Vedic meditation in Clovelly at the moment, but I'm also about to start
in Sydney.
In Sydney, yeah, sorry. And then so it'll be like then moving it to Paddington, which is also like in Sydney. There's going to be like a old church which I'm going to actually start teaching, which will be really nice. I'll start that after Easter, and then I'll also be running like a 90-minute Himalayan breathwork journey there as well, like on Sundays as well, which will be really good. The first Sunday of every month. And then I also teach in Newcastle in New South Wales as well. So like I teach that the last weekend of every month. I teach Vedic meditation there. And then also I do normally 2 retreats every year. So I do an India retreat, which is coming up in October this year. I'm going to go to Bajanath, which is like, there's a temple up there, which most people go to. I'm just going to take a small group of people there to that one, because I've created this new retreat that I'm starting in January next year. And it's actually going to be based on astrology. So it's about going to the different temples of the planets and things like that as well. And so that will be getting put up on my website soon to do that. I teach breathwork every Sunday at Body by Burner in North Bondi. I also, like this weekend, for example, I'm doing an event in Newcastle. So I'm kind of always around, like, doing stuff. If people follow me on Instagram or go on my website, you'll normally always see like where I am. I'm someone that I just try to like spread the love like to wherever I can kind of get to. And if you want astrology readings, I do them online. So I do them from all over the world already. So you can just book a session through my website and yeah.
Amazing. And what is your website? Where can we find you?
Geoff Rupp, just www.geoffrupp.com is my website.
Amazing. Geoff, I feel like we could talk for another hour and a half.
I know,
There's
but
so much here.
we're not the Joe Rogan podcast.
No, we're not the Joe Rogan. We're not that. So, but I will definitely bring you back on. There's so many more questions that I've got. But thank you so much for coming on today. It's so lovely to see you and yeah, just hear more about your journey and where you're at. And and thank you again. Just I learned so much from that as well. So I really appreciate you and want to thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure. I love it. I love that our journeys have kind of like crossed over again, like in a different modality. I think it's like so beautiful.
Yeah, always is.
Thank you for
always
you
is.
too.
Well,
Thank you for all that you're doing as well.
Yeah, you're so welcome. And I will see you very soon.
See you soon.
All right, lots of love.
Bye.
Bye.